Today, I will be discussing the impacts of climate change in the Great Lakes and Corn Belt and the coastal South. Climate change is a major issue threatening ecosystems and people globally, and the United States Department of Defense ranks climate change as one of the most serious threats to society. Even so, only about half of Americans view climate change as a personal risk, as they lack personal experience with climate change or view the related effects as in the future. In addition, nearly half of Americans do not accept climate change as being caused by humans. Despite this opinion, there is overwhelming evidence of worsening climate conditions in the United States. Let's take a look at the climate statistics for 2021. Most of the contiguous United States experienced above average temperatures. As you can see on the map, there are a few regions that experience near average temperatures, shown in white, and almost none that experience below average temperatures, shown in different shades of blue. Precipitation was above average in some pockets of the country, shown in the blue-green shades, while it was below average in others, shown in brown. In 2021 alone, there were 20 weather and climate disasters which had losses exceeding $1 billion each. This was the second highest number of events on record, behind the 22 events that occurred in 2020. These events are outlined in the figure and included heat and cold waves, tornadoes, floods, cyclones, and wildfires, which caused at least 688 fatalities and many more injuries. Let's see how these climate changes affect two regions of the United States, the Great Lakes and Corn Belt region and the coastal South. First, let's take a look at the physiography and character of these regions. The Great Lakes and Corn Belt region is located in the Midwestern United States between the Appalachians and the Rocky Mountains. The states of New York, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas are partially situated in the region, while Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and Missouri are entirely situated in the region, as you can see in the figure. Its land is composed of gently rolling hills and agriculturally fertile soil, and is home to the Great Lakes. The manufacturing core and agricultural core are important to the region's character and drive the economic activity. The coastal South is in the southeastern United States. Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas are all partially situated in the region, while Florida is entirely in the region. Its physical character is defined by its warm and humid weather and orientation along the Gulf of Mexico and Atlantic Ocean. Its economy is driven by natural resources in the form of agriculture, mining, and fishing, as well as industry and trade. Both of these regions are severely impacted by climate change in several ways. The Great Lakes and Corn Belt region is extremely important for agricultural production. The Corn Belt accounts for the majority of corn and soybean that is produced in the United States and over a third of the global corn supply. It is also the world's largest producer and exporter of soybeans. The increased variability in weather patterns and severity and frequency of extreme weather events caused by global climate change will negatively affect crop yield. In the last 100 years, change in precipitation has been the most influential climate factor relevant to the Corn Belt region. Summer rainfall has increased nearly everywhere in the Corn Belt, and fall precipitation has increased most in the northeastern and far eastern Corn Belt. The map shows annual precipitation. The abundance of blue and green shading in the region, roughly outlined in red, indicates an increase in annual precipitation. Increased precipitation has increased atmospheric moisture, causing cropping changes such as a conversion of pasture and range to row crop and a transfer away from wheat to corn and soybean rotation. Summer temperature trends are generally flat with some minor upward or downward trends, but there are differences in average maximum and minimum temperatures. Average minimum temperatures are rising during the summer and throughout the year in the Corn Belt. Increasing overnight minimum temperatures during the growing season can lead to stress on the crops and an increased disease potential, reducing corn production in the Corn Belt over the last 10 years. Warmer temperatures have also lengthened the growing season. With frost-free states earlier in the spring and later in the fall, the growing season has lengthened by 9 to 10 days. Climate change will also have an important effect on other components in the Great Lakes and Corn Belt region besides agricultural production. One study projected climate changes in the Great Lakes region over the next century based on low and high greenhouse gas emissions. It focused on Chicago, the largest city in the region. Most of these projected changes are continuations of what is already being observed. The study projected an increased frequency of very hot summers, as shown in the figure, expanding the heat wave season. The frequency and intensity of extreme cold days is also expected to decline in the next century, and mean wintertime temperatures are expected to rise 2 to 4 degrees Celsius. Extreme high temperatures and the resulting air quality decreases will lead to an increase in related morbidity and mortality, although cold-related mortality is more likely to decrease as winter temperatures warm. Ground-level ozone and particulate matter concentrations are projected to rise, which will have a significant effect on human health, agricultural crops, and ecosystems. Runoff is also likely to increase, and we could see a decrease in lake water levels of 1.5 feet by the end of the century due to warmer temperatures and decreased ice cover. Terrestrial ecosystems could suffer as suitable habitats for some plant species could move northward. Habitats of important trees could substantially decline. Animal populations could decline or increase depending on their abilities to adapt or move with changing climates. The impact of plant and animal pathogens could also increase with higher temperatures. Aquatic ecosystems could also see negative effects. Lake surface temperatures would likely warm earlier in the spring, reach higher summer temperatures, and cool slower in the fall. More rapid and stronger stratification in the summer may limit the availability of nutrients for phytoplankton, which are the base of the food chain, reducing their crop and negatively affecting the zooplankton and fish that depend on them. This would also reduce oxygen available to bottom-dwelling bacteria, plants, and animals. Warmer water temperatures may also stimulate the growth of algae, which is a possible promoter of pathogens. Overall, climate change is negatively impacting agricultural production in the Great Lakes and Corn Belt, an activity that is crucial to the character and economic activity of the region. Human health, along with terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems, could also see devastating effects as a result of the changing climate. Climate change will have a disproportionate effect on coastal regions. The coastal south is specifically vulnerable to climate change events such as sea level rise, heat waves, hurricanes, and droughts due to its latitude, topography, and proximity to the Atlantic Ocean and Gulf of Mexico. Over the past 100 years, there has been uneven warming across the southeastern United States, a region encompassing the coastal south, with 2010 to 2020 being the warmest decade on record for this region. The southeastern United States, and therefore the coastal south, experiences a higher percentage of intensifying heat waves than any other part of the country. Total rainfall is also increasing across most of the region, with an increase in heavy rain events. Projections indicate that temperature and rainfall will continue to change in the southeast, with precise estimates varying depending on greenhouse gas emissions. A significant increase in the number of days over 95 degrees Fahrenheit per year across the southeast is predicted, indicated by the especially dark red color in the coastal south region, roughly indicated by the blue box. The state of Florida is entirely part of the coastal south and is therefore a good state to look at to examine the effects of climate change on the region. The Florida Peninsula has warmed more than 1 degree Fahrenheit during the last century, the sea level is rising about 1 inch every decade, and heavy rainstorms continue to become more severe. Rising temperatures in the coming decades are likely to increase storm damage, harm coral reefs, increase frequency of hot days, and decrease the risk of freezing on the agriculture in Florida. The land surface on the Florida coast is sinking as oceans continue to warm, as a result of sea levels rising and submerging wetlands and dryland, eroding beaches, and exacerbating flooding. Tropical storms have been more intense in the past 2 decades, partially because oceans provide the storm with more potential energy. Hurricane wind speeds and rainfall rates will likely continue to increase with increasing temperatures. Since 1958, the amount of precipitation during heavy rainstorms has increased by 27% in the southeast US, and this trend is likely to continue. The hotter temperatures during the summer will likely reduce yields of crops. Livestock productivity will also be reduced because heat stress disrupts the animal's metabolism. Human health will continue to be at risk as increasingly high temperatures can cause heat stroke and dehydration, and warmer air can increase ground level ozone, a key component of smog, shown in the picture on the right. This can have negative effects such as aggravating asthma and lung disease. Overall, climate change currently has and will continue to have devastating effects on the coastal south region, mostly through the increased frequency and intensity of severe weather events. There are many similarities and differences regarding the effects of climate change on the Great Lakes and Corn Belt region when compared to the coastal south. Both regions will continue to see rising temperatures and increased precipitation. This will affect agricultural production in both regions positively by lowering the probability of frost and elongating growing seasons, and negatively by decreasing productivity. Both regions will see an increased risk to human health through the increased frequency of heat waves and ground level ozone concentrations. The regions do differ as the Great Lakes and Corn Belt focuses more on the effects of climate change on agricultural production, as this is an extremely important issue to the region, while the resulting sea level rise and natural disasters are more relevant to the coastal south due to its position along the Gulf Coast and Atlantic Ocean. The increasing frequency of heat waves is also more extreme in the coastal south. The coastal south will see more days with temperatures exceeding 95 degrees Celsius compared to the Great Lakes and Corn Belt, due to its already warmer climate and southern location. Conversely, the rate of temperature change is higher in some parts of the Great Lakes and Corn Belt compared to the coastal south. In the Great Lakes and Corn Belt region, many of the trends already observed are projected to continue, with severity dependent on emission levels. Temperatures could increase by 2 to 6 degrees Celsius before the end of the century. Similarly, climate trends in the coastal south will continue with intensity dependent on human activities. Extreme consequences are projected in the coastal south, including the lower third of Florida being underwater by the end of the century. The issue of climate change in the entire United States will continue to be one of the most pressing issues relevant to all Americans. Increasing greenhouse gas concentrations, which are largely responsible for climate change, will continue to increase unless billions of tons of annual emissions substantially decrease. Thank you for watching, and here are my references.